You made it to level 2, deeper questions leading to deeper answers. I'm Tomas Garza, and I'm here to help you decide to transform. I'll be setting the pace for the process to support your unfolding. Learn and commit to a practice that brings simplicity and then awareness of what is ready to be released. Join me now and allow the experience of a deeper sense of love. Hello and welcome to Decide to Transform. I'm your host, Tomas Garza. And as always, I have a very, very special show for you today. I have a very special guest that you're going to love because Selena Moon is an expert as an intuitive coach and a transformational facilitator, a healer, joining us today from British Columbia. I'm going to read Selena's bio to you in one moment. And this is a show that we've been looking forward to for some time. And we're going to talk about a lot of very current, very topical, very poignant events that are going on in this world, and I am looking forward to it. So, Selena is an intuitive coach and transformational facilitator with a background in psychosomatic therapy, NLP, and energy healing. Selena is dedicated both personally and professionally to the journey of self-discovery, as she believes it is possible for the human race to evolve radically beyond our limitations by becoming self-aware. Besides being a facilitator of spiritual evolution for clients and event participants, Selena prioritizes practical applications to develop greater emotional awareness in people by bridging the gap between spirituality and practicality. Selena can see emotional and spiritual root causes that create physical limitations and assist people in transforming these blocks through quantum healing techniques. Selena is passionate about working with individuals who are ready to break through their own limitations and create substantial shifts in their lives. Please help me welcome Selena Moon. Selena, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure to be here with you all today.
This is going to be fun, and for a worldwide audience as well, and commercial free, by the way, here. And we're going to enjoy this conversation greatly. So, Selena, there's so much in your bio, so much experience that I'm dying to talk about with you here. And one of the themes that keeps coming up is the theme of self-discovery. When I think about you and your work, it's all about self-discovery. So how did you begin that journey? When was that? What was that
That's
like?
a great question. Yeah. So I went through a fairly challenging divorce when I was in my mid-20s.
Okay.
And it led me to a place where I felt extremely disconnected from myself, disconnected from the friendships that I had built, disconnected from my family, disconnected even from my career. And I felt very isolated and very alone for a period of about a year. And during that time, it really catapulted me to start doing a lot of work in the area of self-discovery, because I felt like I had completely lost myself, my labels and my attachments to the outside world, and everything that I thought that I needed to define myself came crumbling down to a point where I no longer felt like I knew who I was anymore. And I really had to take a hard look at my life and ask myself why I had made some fairly, weird decisions in my life that I don't necessarily regret, but I can look back at myself now with compassion and say, this is how I was operating from the place that I was at during that time. Okay. And this is why I made these choices. And I think once I started diving into myself and discovering these aspects of myself and the way that I was thinking and the belief patterns that were operating, I really began to recognize my patterns and see why I was making certain decisions, and then forgive myself for putting myself in scenarios that were not quite comfortable for me.
Okay. And then this happened several years ago then, correct?
Yeah, this happened about 10 years ago.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Well, and then, what did the process of discovery look like for you when you were going through that process? Because I know that a number of our listeners have been through, if not a divorce, at least a very painful breakup. from a
Hmm.
long-term relationship. So, at what point did you begin to ask yourself different questions?
Yeah. So for me personally, it was really all about spending time in isolation. And what I realized was that I spent so much of my time being around others to please other people and to feel like I belonged somewhere. I would often go out of alignment with myself to really adhere to the needs of others. And I didn't really know what my
Okay.
own needs were. And
Mhm.
so I really started to do more traveling, solo traveling.
Yeah.
Yeah, I started to really connect with a variety of books and practices, such as The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron, which totally
Hmm.
revamped my life. I don't know if you've ever heard of it before.
I've heard of it, never read it. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So there's a practice in there called the morning pages, where every morning
Hmm.
you get up and you just write whatever's top of mind and you don't necessarily think about it. It can just be chicken scratch. And it
Okay.
really started to, yeah, you do it for 30 minutes every morning. And all of a sudden, my mind started clearing up, and I was really able to go deeper into myself and start exploring the different elements of self as I started writing and connecting back through meditation, through nature, through solo travel, and releasing the people in my life, not by choice, but just sort of by circumstance.
Mhm.
And I was sort of forced to dive into some of my own stuff that I had been avoiding.
Okay. Yeah, and would
Yeah.
you yeah, all right, so a couple of things that I definitely wanna ask you about. One
Okay.
is the travel, and the other is, you just mentioned it, some of your stuff that you were avoiding, and
Mm.
would you mind saying some more about that for our listeners? What was that specifically?
Yeah. So, for example, well, did you want me to talk about the travel first or the avoiding stuff
Oh
first?
gosh, well, you know, um, let's talk about the travel and then the avoiding stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, with the travel, I had gone backpacking quite a bit before my marriage happened, and I was already very accustomed to going on adventures by myself and going
Cool.
through Europe and taking road trips. But after my divorce, I decided to do something which I called my own silent retreat. So
Hmm.
it wasn't
Mhm.
like an organized retreat. It was like self-inflicted silence.
Right.
And
Self-inflicted retreat. Now you're gonna sell these to us? Self-inflicted? I love that.
it's a self-inflicted silent retreat.
Uh-huh.
And so I would just like send myself to these places like Mexico and Cuba, and I would put myself in like a little like energetic container where I wouldn't interact with people, like even right down to the food. Everything was like buffet style, so I never had to order anything. And I just really kept to myself, and I didn't talk to anybody. I brought journals, I brought crystals, and I brought
Okay.
some books. And I would do this for like 10 days at a time, and I just would go so deep into myself through meditating with the crystals and really connecting to my intuition and diving into my heart and letting myself cry whenever I needed to cry, and letting myself express through my writing whatever I hadn't expressed to anybody in a long time. And all of a sudden I just started integrating so many things that were going on beneath the surface, but I had never really given myself a chance to explore or experience.
Okay. Yeah. Well, and it's really interesting because people think of a lot of retreats being held in silence in a retreat center or a cloistered
Yeah.
environment. So here you were, of
Self-inflicted, baby.
yeah, avoiding restaurants and things. So I've written down the term self-inflicted silent retreat. So how long were these retreats?
Anywhere from 7 to 10 days.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and you took yourself to Mexico. So where were you in
Yeah.
Mexico on your silent
So
retreats?
yeah, so I did a month in Isla Mujeres, and which you know all about.
I love
And
it.
yep, and I did about three of them to Manzanillo, Cuba.
Okay.
I kept going to
Yeah.
Manzanillo. I went to Manzanillo 3 times. Yeah.
Mm, I love it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hmm.
Yeah. Well, this is very interesting because so many people that are involved in a breakup or a divorce, that are in the midst of that dream of travel. They dream of going someplace to just experience something different as a reset. So, what? what did you learn from these self-inflicted silent retreats that you'd care to share?
Definitely. So I had just been so accustomed to really looking out for other people. I was brought up in a society, or in a culture, in a community, in a society where everyone else is before you. And so
Mm-hmm.
my inner relationship with myself did not exist, because I was always suppressing my own needs, to the
Okay.
point where I didn't even know what I needed. So it's like, if
Mm.
I needed water, or if I needed more sleep, or if I needed exercise, or if I needed stillness, or if I needed music, or if I needed love, or if I needed touch, if I needed sunshine, I didn't know. I never knew what I needed, because I was just so involved as an empath with all the people around me all the time, that I finally had an opportunity to listen to my inside self, that was asking for things and telling me things that were needed, that I had never heard before.
Okay. Yeah. Well, and it's very interesting that you mentioned your upbringing, and cultural upbringing, and this was
Hmm.
then one of the first times that you began to do this. Because I know that there are
Yeah.
people out there listening that would love to go off to the Caribbean and Isla
Hmm.
Mujeres and Cuba for an extended period of time traveling.
Hmm.
And so, where have you? What's been your most memorable in all of your travels? Is there one journey that stands out as the most memorable? And if so, for what reason?
Well, I have all kinds of memorable journeys, because there's a
Yeah.
part of me that's super mischief and likes to get into trouble.
All right.
And so there's some really interesting stories that I have from my trips to Europe, just doing a little
Cool.
bit, getting a little crazy, dancing on tables and getting almost arrested in foreign
Ah,
lands.
yes.
Um,
It's
but
not
then
life until you almost get locked up.
That's what I said too.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I've had some pretty great experiences. I had my passport stolen when I was in Madrid, and had to
Oh,
find a way to
wow.
get back to Canada without
Ooh.
knowing anybody. And that was really fun. I met all these great people and was super supported by the universe. Um, and really, I think one of the most amazing trips that I ever did was to Machu Picchu
Oh,
in
wow.
Peru,
Yeah.
where I
Okay.
did the Inca Trail. And I really feel like the Inca Trail woke me up to a whole new way of being, with nature, with myself, with simplicity, with silence, with just taking life one step at a time, facing my fears, overcoming altitude sickness and things like that really tested me to a point where I feel like I really became a lot stronger of a person from that
Okay.
experience. Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, Machu Picchu, excellent. Well, I did want to spend a few minutes talking about travel, but
Yeah.
the other topic is something that I think will really help a lot of people, especially those that are going through a traumatic breakup, a divorce, or even a switch in careers, any kind of life
Mm,
transition, and that's
yeah.
being aware that you've been running from your own stuff, from your own experience, and then doing something to turn that around. So what did that look like for you?
Yeah. So for me personally, I grew up in a family that I was kind of the black sheep of a family.
Oh, okay.
And I had a lot of I had a lot of weird stuff going on, like psychic gifts and intuitive powers and abilities, and the ability to just really empath the people around me. And I always felt a little bit like an outcast in my family. I felt like an outcast in my community. My beliefs were very different. I never really identified, for example, with death, with crazy amounts of grief, because I always had this sense of the afterlife. My
Okay.
sister would love to be like, on the phone talking to her friends late at night, and I would just be sitting by the window talking to the moon late at night. And I was just always sort of a strange child. My friends growing up, a lot of them were my teachers. I spent a
Okay.
lot of time with
Hmm.
teachers, even though I wasn't like a teacher's pet. I just really enjoyed speaking to adults.
All
Um,
right.
yeah, so I've always had sort of a weird quality about me since birth,
Mhm.
and I felt very uncertain of myself most of my life, because no one could ever reflect back to me what that was.
Okay.
So the people around me always knew there was something about me, but no one was able to really articulate it in words or explain it to me, or really just identify it as being okay. So I spent a lot of time just hiding these parts of myself, or feeling weird about these parts of myself, or feeling a little bit out of place or alienated by my circles and my family members. And so I really didn't give myself a chance to go into those aspects of myself until after my divorce.
Okay.
And when I started doing that, I started realizing, I'm really just not, I have to accept that I'm just not going to be like everyone else. It's like the world is talking about being a better giver and learning how to give. And it's like, I need to learn how to be a better receiver. And I give too much. And, it's like, I often felt that whatever was out there and being broadcasted was the opposite information of what I needed. And I think a lot of self-development books and a lot of I guess like healing work really does cater to the narcissist. It caters to the type of person that, that is a taker and is selfish. And I was kind of the opposite of that. I was always I was too unselfish and too giving. And I spent a lot of my time losing things and giving things away because I just felt like I always wasn't worthy unless I gave something. And so I had a very, very low sense of self-worth. I was a very insecure person, and I really couldn't find a way to make myself feel better until I started diving deeper into myself and identifying that these aspects of myself are safe, and it's okay for me to have these weird elements that is not quite yet understood by society. It's not quite accepted by society. It's not something that you can see somewhere on the news or in a film at the time, or in Hollywood or magazines. Nobody's talking about it. Nobody in school is teaching it. Nobody in my workplace is noticing it or seeing it. It was just very isolating. So the discovery was really about myself and my power, and finding a way to really make peace with that within myself, and then utilize that to start living life in alignment with that.
All right. Well, yes. And, you just mentioned something that is another theme of yours. And that is at the time that you were going through this, all of these characteristics, all of these abilities, if you want to call it that, whatever people want to call these, some people call them spiritual gifts. So whatever terminology one wants to use on that, there was a time not too long ago when this was considered fringe and weird.
And woo-woo.
Yes. And
super woo-woo.
Yeah, super woo-woo. And that is changing. And this is something that I know you love to talk about, and I'd love to hear you talk some more about this. This is, there's a whole massive transformation and change going on right now. So, where are we going, and how do you see all this playing out?
Yeah. So since unlocking my own spiritual powers, I eventually started my own business 7 years ago, helping other people unlock their spiritual powers.
Okay.
And I started working from anywhere from real estate agents to healers to just baristas to people who came from the world of stripping. And the deeper that I got into the souls of the people I was working with, the more I realized that actually every human being has spiritual powers.
Yes.
It's just that they just don't know, and they're not really sure how to use them because they've never really been taught how to use them.
Right.
And so one of the things that I've come to recognize is that the older that we get, the more programmed we are to detach from our true selves and to really forget who we really are at our core, because there hasn't really been anyone to mentor us or lead us into ourselves. And we, from a young age, are not given the tools in our current system to learn how to do that for ourselves. And so for me, I really wanted to come into the world as a person that brought these tools to the people and provided opportunities for people to dive into themselves without actually necessarily over smothering or holding their hand, but rather holding them in a place of unconditional love to empower them to do the work for themselves, but also recognize that they had someone that had their back, that would make sure they wouldn't falter. And so that's that's been my journey, is really the discovery that every single human being actually, yes, in fact, does have spiritual powers. And with my own spiritual powers becoming more and more accentuated, I've been able to really identify more specifically and with more discernment the aspects and the essences of individuals and their spiritual powers. And in relaying those powers back to them, these people get really ignited in their purpose in life, and their career paths become more stronger, and their sense of fulfillment increases, and then their dynamics with their family shift for the better. And there's a greater sense of self-acceptance that happens when people start recognizing their own spiritual gifts and powers.
Right.
And I think that's really where we're going. I think we're going, I think this is if you look at the kids, this new age kids that are coming through, they're very different from how we were growing up.
Yes.
They have very different ways of seeing the world, and they are not going to sit here and tolerate our system, because they are much more evolved past our systems that we are offering, and they need more.
Right.
And so, for me, it's really like the way that I'm seeing this is that we need to evolve quickly, and we need to be able to not only hold space for ourselves to step into the sense of power and awareness of who we are as people and our spiritual powers and our abilities to really get into our emotional bodies and recognize how our emotions play out, and see the way that we experience life, and then identify with our ego versus our higher self, and be able to discern which one is active. And I think that's very, I think that's all very basic from what the future will be. I think what I'm speaking about is just very, very much like, intuition, self-awareness 101. Because I feel like it's going to blast even beyond that, where our future children are going to be like, well, I know I'm from this planet, and I know I came from this planet, and I know that I'm a seed from here, and I know that I bring this technology and this frequency, and I know the sounds like this, and I have all these, telepathic abilities. And I think it's going to be a whole new humanity we're going to see in the future generations from the unlocking of these powers.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things that strikes so many people about this transformation is it seems to be happening at high speed, at an exponential rate. Now, are you experiencing that? I take it you are.
Well, to be honest with you, I feel like I waited my whole life for this pandemic to finally come around.
Okay. Well, say some more about that. Yeah.
Because I feel like I've just been in a waiting game for a very long time of like,
I see.
Cultivating this information and having this knowledge, and just waiting for people to finally be in a space where they feel vulnerable and raw enough to indulge in themselves at this kind of a level. And so for me, it's kind of been like, I feel like I'm like, oh, finally. It just feels like a finally. Yeah.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
I know a lot of our listeners can relate to that. At last, okay, now here we are doing things correctly for once. Yes. Well, and you mentioned a minute ago that we need to evolve quickly. What if we don't as a species? What's going to happen if we don't meet this evolution?
My theory is that the law of duality is not going anywhere. And I really do believe that, when there's light, there's dark, and when there's dark, there's light, and they both do serve a purpose. There was once a time in my life where I was very into this love and light, and completely in denial of the shadow self, and completely in denial of the darkness. And I don't think that actually served me at all. And I don't think it actually serves anybody to deny the darkness. I think it's actually quite healthy. However, if we don't integrate our darkness in a way that helps us to become self-aware, so that our actions are not coming from those dark places, but rather they're fueling our awareness of the light, and then we're using that awareness to step into our positive actions. I really believe that the dark and the light, the bridge between the two is actually lengthening. So what I mean by that is that there's going to be eventually two very distinct parallel realities existing on Earth, where those who are in the darker reality don't even see what's happening in the lighter reality, and then who are in the lighter reality don't see what's happening in the darker reality.
Okay.
And so it's like the same planet, but two very different types of existence. And I think that people are predicting that all the people who are following these new sort of vibrations are going to all go to one part of the world, and the others will stay in one. And I don't believe that. I really don't. Personally, that doesn't resonate with me. I believe that we're all going to be living, we're just going to see what we are, and whatever we're not going to see it anymore, because we're just not vibrating at that anymore.
Right. Now, does this
Yeah.
mean in your mind that we'll be still interacting with people? Because all of the people that are vibrating at a certain level move to a certain part of the world, which actually I don't think will happen either,
Yeah.
because we all prefer certain climates and
Yeah.
and locations,
Yeah.
things like that.
Exactly.
Yeah, will
Yeah.
we be able to interact? Or are the people that are vibrating higher with these new frequencies be able to interact with those who are not?
Well, I think it's just a matter of like attracts like. So if a person who's normally in a dark energy steps into a higher vibrational energy
Okay.
for a day, I think absolutely they can interact with someone from the higher vibrational world. And I think if someone from the higher vibrational world feels like they want to go back into the darkness and explore more of their darkness, then I definitely think that they will then interact with someone from the other world. I think we always have a choice every single day what we're going to
Yeah.
vibe with. And based on
Right.
that vibration, we will attract what we are.
hmm Yeah, yeah, that's very true. And you mentioned doing some of the shadow work. I mean, that's a term, of course, that people
Mm-hmm.
use. Whether
Mm-hmm.
that is one that you use or not. But going into these
Mm-hmm.
darker aspects of yourself,
Mm-hmm.
um,
Yeah.
that how did that serve you in particular?
Mm-hmm. Well, it wasn't all rainbows and unicorns.
Mm, never is.
There was at some point I had to get to a place, Tomas, where I said to myself, if I don't let these emotions move through my body, they will be forever stuck in my body.
Oh, yeah.
And I know that there are two types of people. There are people who go into flight, and then there are people who go into fight.
hmm
And the people who go into fight are the ones that suppress their emotions and tend to store extra weight, like myself and my family. And then there are people who go into flight who actually escape their emotions before they hit their body. And those are the people that have difficulty gaining weight and difficulty, being strong. And
hmm
it's for me in my pattern, it's a fight pattern where I have a tendency to then suppress my emotions. And so I had to sort of be willing to go back and relive my trauma, but from a place of awareness and recognizing that if I relive this once and for all, it will be gone forever.
Okay. Yeah. And when you
Yeah.
work with clients, is this something that you help them do?
Yeah. However, because I'm intuitive, I don't use this model for every client. There are clients that if I were
Okay.
to do that with, they would probably end up in a dark night of the soul for the next 3 years. And I'm
Oh, yeah.
given that information prior to working with them with that. So
hmm
the beautiful thing is when I work with a client, I get to connect with their higher self and ask their higher self, how would you like to process your darkness?
Okay.
And so it's a very individualistic experience for everyone. So some clients, they do need to just have someone hold space for them to dance
hmm
and move it through their body. And then I guide them through a process like that, and it's fine. And others
Okay.
are not even connected enough to their body to do that. And so we have to use I can often use other more spiritual, energetic tools to just start working on the energy body. And that eventually, as you know, trickles into the mental body and the emotional body and the physical body.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, yeah. And when you speak in your biography of quantum healing techniques, are these
Mm-hmm.
some of the techniques that you put into play?
Absolutely, because for me, quantum healing is really about, you can jump to a different timeline,
Yeah.
right? So we can go back to, okay, so someone has a trauma at birth, they're born on. I was laughing with one of my clients the other day. I said, I think maybe you were born onto like a piece of plastic and it was really uncomfortable. Maybe you're just uncomfortable in your body for that reason. It could be something really silly. And so if we could go back and have you being rebirthed onto like a cloud or the feeling of like a soft pillow,
hmm
how would you feel different in your body? And to just really start to bring in that new element of what it's like to be born onto a soft surface can completely change somebody's entire life if that
Okay.
was their trauma. So yeah, it's something that, I'm really gifted with the ability to see where the root of trauma starts from.
hmm
Sometimes I see a past life, sometimes I'll see this life, sometimes I'll see an ancestral thing. Sometimes it'll just be just like a false memory that someone had where someone else was sharing a story and then they took in that story and made it their own too much because they were too open and empathic. So we have to remove that. It's always different from person to person, but the quantum healing is in essence here to shift the vibration of the DNA to have the person vibrating in a different vibration and a different energy. So they're attracting a different reality and experiencing a different effect.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and then at what point did you become aware in your own life that you've
Mm-hmm.
had all of these techniques at your disposal and available to you to help people?
That's a great question. So it's interesting because when I started off in this work, I started with psychosomatic therapy, as you
Mm,
saw. And psychosomatic therapy is how the notion of how your body is your autobiography. So I would have clients come in person, and I would have them lay there naked, and I would be able to tell based on the shape of their back and where they're like, where maybe they had red spots or where they had even birthmarks. I could see even just based on the shape of their forehead, their nose, their lips, their mouth, their symmetry, this, that, where their pain was. I could tell an entire being's story from that. I
okay.
could tell what their relationship was with their mother. I could tell what their relationship was with their father. I could see where they were giving away their power. I could see if they were holding
Oh,
grief. I could see if there was a lack of forgiveness towards somebody. I could see if they thought too much and didn't feel enough.
hmm.
I could see if they felt too much and didn't think enough. I could see if their purpose was on, but their direction was off, or their direction was off and their purpose was off. So I could see so
Okay.
many things just by looking at a body. And so that's how my work started, is I had client after client after client come and lay on my bed, and I would do something called emotional release trigger point therapy. And we were taught 100 and some points in the body to go in and release. But
Okay.
while I was doing this work, I was also in my own meditations heavily. And so
Mm,
eventually my breakthroughs happened when I could finally look at somebody's body, and I would go to one of the points and I'd say like something like, hey, did your dad chase you with a baseball bat when you were a kid? And they'd be like, how do you know that? And it's like, I can actually see that on your left hip at
oh,
this
yeah.
point of your body, and that's what's stored there, and then this person would literally just have an emotional outburst and react to it as I went into it, and then it'd be gone
Okay.
completely dissolved.
Oh, wow.
And so the more that I took these clients in person, the more I was able to see things in these people's bodies that were prevalent. And I
Hmm.
was able to understand why they were having some of the life problems that they were having, because I was also studying the work of Bashar, who talks about how like the world is just our mirror. And so everything we're feeling and experiencing inside
Right.
is also just reflected back to us. And so
Yeah.
when someone would be like, oh, I'm having difficulties finding a job, or I'm being victimized in my relationship, or whatever it is, I was always able to get to the root of that just by looking at their body. And
Okay.
shifting that would shift their relationships, because
Right.
we hold these memories in our body. So when we release the memory from the body, we actually bring a different energy, a different vibration. We shift our relationships, we shift our patterns, everything shifts. So
Yes.
people who came to me that were like infertile would leave fertile and have a baby.
Hmm.
People that came to me that were obese would potentially lose 5 inches in one session with me around their waist. So there were a lot of very powerful, potent things
I love it.
happening. And I was able to really start to use my gifts that were coming through my meditations to see in a more fine-tuned way the energies on people's bodies, and eventually got to a point where I didn't even have to look at a body anymore. I could just listen to a voice.
Oh, yeah.
And
Okay.
so it's like, I don't even need to see my clients anymore. I can just hear their voice, and I can tell them, okay, the reason this is happening with your partner is because there's something I'm sensing in this earlobe or whatever. Where did you ever have this experience? And they don't even know they're related. I had a
Okay.
client the other day say to me,
Yeah.
like, I want to make more money. And I said, well, who did you bully in elementary school? And she's like, what does that have to do with it? And I said, well, your guilt is blocking your abundance. And she had no idea how the two were related. So, I mean,
Okay.
everything is interrelated. All of our lives are
Yes. Yes.
interrelated.
Yes. No
And
question.
I think that work really opened me up to this world of then being able to do it like this online.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
and it varies depending on the person's needs then. So how can people find out more about you if they're
Mhm.
interested in working with you? How can they reach you?
Sure. So what I recommend doing is just going to my website. It's
Okay.
SelenaEllaMoon.com. So Selena. Ella is ELLA, and moon like the moon.com. And you can check out some of the testimonials that my clients have shared and learn more about my coaching and the packages that I offer, and just a little bit more about myself there.
All right.
Yeah, you
Yeah, I
can reach
love
out
it.
to me from there too. Yeah,
Perfect. Yes. And it's SelenaEllaMoon.com. And I
you
want to
got
ask
it.
you a couple of other questions here.
Sure. Yeah.
One is, you mentioned in your biography a gap, bridging a gap between
Mm.
spirituality and practicality. And I'd love it if you would say a little bit more about what that's like, how that works.
Yeah. So I think what people don't necessarily realize is that there's like a direct correlation between things like our karma, our energy bodies, and our habits and
Yes.
what we choose to engage in. So, for example, the energy body is affected by what we eat. So
Hmm.
what the eating part is the practical part, and that does influence your spiritual abilities.
Right.
And if you have certain habits or addictive patterns of behavior, um, that can also block spiritual pathways. And so
Right.
we have to understand that if we want to explore our spirituality, that our practical life needs to mirror back to us our alignment with our soul. Otherwise, we're going to create a dissociation between the two worlds, and we're going to become either way too woo-woo, or we're going to become totally disconnected from our spirituality and way too practical. And
Okay.
that's what I'm seeing there, where the gap is in the world, is that people are either on one side of the fence or the other.
I gotcha. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and practicality and spirituality in a lot of people's minds don't go hand in hand. So it's
Right.
wonderful to know that there are ways to connect the two on this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and Selena, I've also been meaning to ask you about something that, well, the listeners will now know, if they don't already, that you and I are both involved in, and that is
Yeah.
IAwesome. So,
Mm.
yeah, let's talk a little bit more about this and what you're most excited about. And actually, if you wouldn't mind walking our listeners through what it is we're even talking about here, besides the word awesome.
IAwesome. Yeah. IAUSM, the International Academy of Universal Self-Mastery. It's,
Yes.
Tomas and I have rocked this council with our skills.
We're rocking it with our skill set, everybody. Just so you know, worldwide listeners, we're rocking it.
We're rocking it over here. Yeah, so it's great to be involved with this. I'm sure you feel the same way, where we're creating an
Yes.
online platform
Hmm.
for teachers all over the world who are involved in bringing forth the new age education around the concept of self-mastery for people all over the world to discover themselves in ways that are not taught in our standard school systems.
Yeah. Right.
And so I think that, it's what I love about IAwesome. It's not only like an online schooling platform where you get to take your soul and ask your soul, what do I want to learn? And let your soul choose and your own curriculum. But you also get to have this social platform, where you can connect with your teachers. You can connect with other students through groups and have empowering conversations and stimulating conversations that really tickle your curiosity when it comes to learning about yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not only is it a learning platform, it's also a social community that
Yeah.
we're active building. And I can tell all of you listening out there that it is going to launch this fall, an online academy. And I know Selena and I both know a number of the courses that are going to be offered, and they're going to
Mm-hmm.
be all kinds of healing modalities.
Mm-hmm.
There will be business courses. There will be courses that focus on personal growth and transformation, on exercise. It's a really wonderful community of talented faculty members from all over the world. And this is wonderful. Selena, what will you be offering on this platform?
Oh, good question. I'm going to be teaching a course about the universal laws.
Oh, all right.
Yeah. So I have a 6-part course,
Cool.
and I'm probably going to run a part 2 of it and a part 3 of it. And it's going to be an exciting place for people to learn about the universal laws and how they apply to their everyday practical realities. So
I love
Yeah.
that. Okay,
What about
yeah.
you? What are you teaching?
Well, actually, I'm teaching a course in basic meditation in Spanish, and
Nice.
my business partner and a friend, a host of Light on Living on Om Times Radio, Lisa Berry, and I are teaching our signature podcast development course called Podcast Prosperity, and a mastermind that's entitled Our Conscious Playground. And you can actually hear some of those episodes of Our Conscious Playground here on this radio show on Decide to Transform. So
Oh, that's
yeah,
great.
we'll be super busy, and I can just say that from interviewing a number of the faculty members myself that I want to take everyone's courses,
Yeah.
all of them. Yes.
Yeah.
So, yeah, for those of you out there listening, this launches this fall. It's the International Academy of Universal Self Mastery. And the acronym is IAwesome, IAUSM. And you can actually visit IAwesome.com, IAUSM.com right now. Even prior to the launch, you
Yeah.
can sign up for our newsletter to stay informed,
Yes.
yes, of everything that's going on. And Selena,
Ooh,
you're
and
one
take
of,
our quiz. Take
yeah,
our
take the
quiz.
quiz. You're one of the scribes too.
I am. So any email you're getting has a little bit of meat in there.
I love this. All right. Beautiful. Beautiful. It's a lot of fun. So definitely,
Yeah.
listeners, check that out. And
Mhm.
Selena's website is Selena Ella Moon, all one word, SelenaEllaMoon.com. So, Selena, before we wrap up, I've really enjoyed this show and getting to speak with you here.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're most welcome. Before we go, what words or anything else that you want to say to
Mhm.
our listeners here?
Yeah, definitely. I want to let the listeners know that your life is absolutely worth every minute, and that the more that you allow your life to be what it is and give yourself the love to dive into yourself and discover aspects of yourself, the more you will be fulfilled and happy in your future. And I really just want to encourage everyone that no matter what challenges you've been through or how frustrating any aspect of your life has been, that there is absolutely a light on the other side of that tunnel. And it's just a matter of really advancing your self-awareness and growing in your state of consciousness through these practices: meditation, self-care, self-love. Just even acknowledging who you are at a soul level can absolutely transform your life. And I want to encourage everyone to get on iawesome.com and get involved with themselves and do that.
All right. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Get involved with yourself and do this work, because as we've
Yeah.
seen, it's not all rainbows and unicorns, as you
No,
put it.
no.
But
But it is on the other
sometimes,
side. It is on the other side.
yeah.
I'd say the rainbows and the unicorns actually end up coming on the other side every time.
Well, that's perfect. So if you're in the market for rainbows and unicorns, do some really serious personal growth work. Oh yeah. Yeah.
If you're in the market for rainbows and unicorns.
Well, and
Well said, Tomas.
thank you, thank you. We all know people that are. All right. Well, Selena, this has been a real pleasure, and you guys, you can tell we have a lot of fun together
Yes, we
here.
do.
So,
Yeah.
yes, Selena, it's been wonderful to have you as a guest on the show today. Thank you again for joining me.
Yeah. And thank you for having me. It's been such a pleasure to connect with you and speak with our audience.
It's a lot of fun. All right, guys. And this has been Decide to Transform with Selena Moon. And I want to wish everybody a beautiful day, wherever you are, wherever you're listening to this show. Have a great one, guys, and we'll talk to you
Bye,
soon.
everybody.